All right, so today's piece is a really seminal work in 20th century contemporary music, especially from the 1960s. It's Berio's Sinfonia, which is for choir and orchestra. This is also going to be our first Luciano Berio episode, and Berio is a very important composer in my undergraduate years, and I think they're a very good composer to study when you're first getting into composition because his music's super accessible and almost postmodern in a way. And it's unlike anything else really that was going on at the time. Let's look at the setup here. So the piece is sort of like, you got your eight voices with four mics or five mics all sent to a mixing console and then projected out of four speakers. You also have a sixth mic on a solo violinist. And then the podium here, where the conductor's standing, is directing all the other players of the orchestra. I think the idea is, you have your strings in an ordinary setup, and you have three percussionists. Between percussions one and two, you have your like keys and harp. Yeah, that's weird. I had no idea. So this piece has actually three violin sections. Weird. Okay. I've never I've never really taken the time to like look at this in detail, but you got four 4-3-4-3 for the winds, plus a couple saxophones, and then 4-4-3-1 for the brass. There is an electric organ and an electric like clavichord, I guess. And then the percussion list is pretty big. The first percussionist is the timpanist. He's doubling on Glock, large tam tam, snare drum, bongos, guiro. Percussion two is mainly on marimba. They also have a tam tam, sizzle cymbal, their own bass drum, snare drum, bongos, tambourine. Percussion three, or no, percussion two also has three wood blocks, frusta, their own guiro, triangle, and percussion three. Their main pitched thing is the vibraphone. Then they got the small tam tam. So like three different sizes of tam tam for the percussionists. They have their own cymbal, their own bass drum, their own snare drum, their own bongos, their own tambourine. They also got some castanets, their own guiro, and two triangles. Here's the first thing you hear in the score: the eight voices and the three tam tams. And you can see they're singing various like vowel sounds used with like the International Phonetic Alphabet and square brackets are notated in that way. And yeah, what else to say about this piece? There's like a movement dedicated to Martin Luther King called "O King." There's a movement that quotes Mahler's Fourth Symphony, I believe, the one with the scherzo that's very like light and kind of about death. And that movement that quotes the Mahler has a ton of like narration in it, and it's very meta. And when I first heard it, like as a teenager, really, I was really taken with it, and I think it's very captivating. So who's this guy Berio? Well, he was an Italian composer who was born in 1925 and died in 2003. And yeah, he's most famous for this piece, Sinfonia, and a series of solo pieces called his sequenzas, which are very demanding virtuosic solo pieces in more of a modernist style. He was married to Kathy Berberian, the mezzo-soprano, and wrote many works for her that some of which incorporate more like popular music and are a little bit more like open-minded to such things. And so Berio was like this modernist composer, but he was not like a staunch modernist. He had other sort of eclectic tastes. I would highly recommend looking at his sequenzas. I have a couple of the scores, but like I saw all of these in concert in Toronto at my university, oddly enough, at U of T, and it was really, really formative for me. Like I don't think I'd be the same composer I am today if I didn't see that. It was really like unlike anything that I would see here in my hometown. And it was so impactful. I almost can't describe it. You know, you just would have had to have been there. Um, and if you were there and it didn't affect you, I don't know. I mean, just I don't want to talk to you. Like, um, the recording that I'm going to be listening to is in the video description, and I'll see you in a little bit. Let you know what I think on this listen. It's been a real long time, and even though I wasn't particularly psyched up for the listening today, I think this is going to be really nostalgic. Okay, so this was fun. It was a little bit hard to follow along just because the score is so tall. So it was very hard to see what was going on, and I think the cutaway score aspect actually made it more difficult to read. Um, but I realized that I didn't really know the fourth and fifth movement that well, and I totally forgot that the piece is in like this big arch form. Um, I'm more familiar with the first three movements, so it's kind of cool how the first and fifth movement have this same sort of like complex textural thing going on. Um, and then the second and fourth movement are more like choir focused and have this like single melodic line that's decorated kind of idea. And then of course the big set piece is the middle movement which quotes the Mahler, which is sort of like the heart of the work. And that third movement is so memorable that I think this is like a really good example of how to write an arch form piece. You really have to make the middle like the focus of the piece, and I think Barrio does a great job of that. And it just got me thinking about form. Um, I guess there's other things I could talk about, but I think a lot has already been said about this piece. I mean, it's really fantastic. It really shows in an accessible way uh, how useful and inventive modernist music is, and how really developed like rhythm and counterpoint and pitch and form, how developed all of these things were by the 1960s. And I think it's easy to forget that with a very dense modernist work, or it's hard to see that, but it's on full display here because the content is made a little bit more accessible, and there's like quotation, there's some more like tonalish sounding moments, and simpler moments like in the second and fourth movement. I think it's an incredibly influential piece in that respect. Like, I think, for example, Valentin Silvestrov, he took his whole style from this sort of like thing that Berrios doing in the second and fourth movements, and it's sort of, yeah, this is like a pre-postmodern piece. It's a lot of postmodern music really um, borrows from it. So yeah, the next and last piece in the series is actually an opera by Messiaen, which I'm gonna split up into parts, I think, because it's so massive. And so it might take me a while to record that one. But until then, happy listening, and thanks for joining me into the penultimate orchestra episode.